business with people, and don't forget that.
If you have an external link, you are 6 times worse off.
You know, what is it that you solve and who do you solve them for? To be like Vegemite and have some people really love you and some people really not. And that's okay, you know.
Algorithm is different for absolutely everybody. It is so smart. It is different for everybody.
It's really easy to scroll through your news feed and go like.
Got to do what's right for you and do what's right for your audience, you know, because everybody is different.
This is like, here's my why, here's who I've worked with, and this is how you can work. So to kind of sum up that tip, I think just be real and have conversation.
You can see if they're your ideal client or not. You can't get that information elsewhere. You can't get it from Twitter. Certainly can't get it from Instagram or Facebook.
And what you tend to consume and even heavily post is what the algorithm will feed you.
There's no one rule. You can do things different ways.
Some people do like text only. Some people like video. Some people love documents.
What's our strategic intent? What do we want to be known for? And what does that visual representation of that look like?
Like standing in the corner and waving, or walking up to someone and saying hello. So
who's my audience? Who am I tuning up for? And what do they care about?
And for those that are jumping in, look, welcome to a live webinar with, I'll say a thorn between 3 roses. But yeah, welcome to System 1357. And today we're going to share some LinkedIn tips with Karen, with Jillian and Anna, all 3 different array of experience all around for a long time. So this is going to be lots of fun and pretty exciting, right? So a couple of bits of homework or housekeeping. What's that?
We're all very old.
I was thinking, has anybody done the math on how much collective experience we've got?
I don't want to know.
It could be pretty big, couldn't it? Because we've all been on LinkedIn for years. I think Anna used to be a recruiter, right? I did too. So we're all early adopters. Decades, I think.
Well, a quick poll. I started in 2006.
Ooh.
On LinkedIn, wow. I'm 2009.
2005, late 2005, but I set up an account and then couldn't figure out how to get back into it. So I'm one of those people who had 2 accounts for a long time.
Yeah, well, I'm 2008, but we've got somebody already coming in saying 2004. Wow,
that was early.
Wow.
But I had 2006. I started and I had 4 connections that year. And the first connection I had was someone I was doing business with. So the only thing I can remember out of that or take from that, it was something to do with business, the reason why I started it. He must have said, go join LinkedIn or something. So I did. Yeah, but anyway, so 4 connections in the first year. And, so the good news is if you want any more information, that's what these 3 people do. They're here to help you with your LinkedIn journey. So after this session, feel free to reach out and find out what else you can learn from these 3 legends, okay? So what I might do first off is, like I said, we're going to run for an hour, just a little bit of housekeeping, do the Q&A, put the chat in. The girls are going to keep it talking about their topics specifically, but they are also going to interact amongst themselves as well. So, we're talking about profile, we're talking about content, and we're talking about, connections. And it's going to be 3 things that everyone knows they need to do, but, it's going to come from a different angle from years and years of experience, which makes us sound really young. But anyway.
Years and years of experience. Absolutely. And I think I'm first up, aren't I, talking about profile.
Let's roll.
And I'd love you to heckle me here because I wonder if we're disagreeing on this, Scotty, because I think one of the most important parts of a LinkedIn profile is the LinkedIn background banner, and everybody should go and check out Jillian Bullock's LinkedIn background banner because it is sorry, Jillian, it is awesome. I love it. I love that you got that little click because you got content creator set. But the LinkedIn background banner, I think, is such an important visual representation of what you do. And where I thought you might heckle me a little bit, Scotty's our sponsor here, is, you got a picture of it surfing, which is very much part of what you do. But I'm always saying to people, please don't put up a picture of a beach or a picture of, you doing leisure activities because it's a work platform. So we need to think, what's our strategic intent? What do we want to be known for? And what does that visual representation of that look like? You know, I mean, most of us are visual learners, aren't we? You know, I think it's like 60, 70% of us are visual learners. Yeah, see, thank you. Surfing. But very on brand for what you do, Scotty. But
That's the point.
Are you looking for more sponsors for surfing? Is that right? Yeah, maybe. So I really love thinking about what's your strategic intent? What do you want to get out of LinkedIn? And making sure you've got a background banner that talks to that. Not one of you on a beach or a pretty holiday scene, because that just tells me you want to be on holiday, you know? So make sure it's really on point. Think about maybe your customers' pain points or what the resolution of that pain point looks like. Oh, that's awesome. I love that, Anna. Really great. So, you know, so think about that. I also think one of the most important parts of your LinkedIn profile is your headline, the bit that sits underneath your name. And I think that's important for so many reasons. One, it follows you everywhere. So whenever you're direct messaging somebody, in the direct message inbox, you can see at the very top their headline. Whenever somebody's commenting on a post, they can see, yeah, just don't look at my cover story. It's awesome. It's awful. Yours is awesome, Jillian. Again, mine's just terrible. Mine's an example of what not to do in your cover story. So your headline, make sure that you're really talking to, again, your customers' pain points. You know, what is it that you solve and who do you solve them for?
Now, you do realize the only reason why I did that cover story is because I was having a very bad hair day. And so I turned it into a cartoon so that my face wouldn't be there at all.
But it's really, you know, it's really different. It's really creative. You can get really creative with it. You know, you've got good hair happening today. You could do another video. But I like the cartoon. You know, I think it's really great that you can mix that up a little bit. What else on about headlines? I think it's really important that you start strong. You know, so often I'm telling people in their headline to make sure that you're talking to the problems you solve and who you solve them for. And when you start with, you know, I help business leaders do, then you might be creating the impression that you're somebody who's just going to spam all the time. So I think it's really important to keep it simple initially and talk to what it is you do. I think that clarity trumps cleverness. You know, you might have a really clever sentence, but if it's really confusing people or they're getting a feeling you're going to spam them all the time, that can be really off-putting. Also think that, you know, we don't know what the LinkedIn algorithm is, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different LinkedIn algorithms, but every LinkedIn profile is ranked differently and a number of factors impact that relevancy ranking. And one of the most important factors in that are the keywords in your headline. So make sure that it's keyword rich, but I wouldn't keyword stuff it to the point where it doesn't make sense or it's not going to be compelling to people. What about skills? What do you think, Jillian and Anna? You know, how important are skills these days? Because sometimes if you've got the right skills in your LinkedIn profile, very bottom of your profile, you need to make sure that you've got the right skills that solve your problems and solve your clients' problems. And if you've got skills in there that are just not relevant, you know, I mean, how many CEOs do you have? You look at their skills and they've got Microsoft Word or Excel in there, you know, so you need to make sure that they're really relevant to the problems you solve. But how much that impacts your relevancy ranking seems to change to me. You know, when did you guys last test it? Have you had a look, Jillian, Anna? You know, you're both LinkedIn experts, and feel free to chime in, Scotty. But sometimes it seems to rank it and sometimes it doesn't. What are your experiences?
Look, I have my skills up to date. I don't have a high priority on them, mainly because and certainly what I tell people with profile is prioritize getting recommendations over worrying about whether your skills are fully up to date, and particularly getting the endorsements for the skills. I think automation on LinkedIn, those automation tools really ruined that, because you could auto endorse connections, which I've had so many people endorse me for a skill that, and I've never even spoken to that person. So how on earth do they know whether I know about social media? I mean, they might know it from a post, but they're just trying to use these automation tools. So I think particularly the endorsement of skills really lost its value with automation. Having the right skills up to date, though, I think is a really good idea, particularly if people are reviewing your profile, looking to work with you. They're very important in a recruiting environment, much more so, I think, than those that are on LinkedIn for business development reasons. But yeah, I think it's important to have them up to date, but they're not high on my priority list, I must admit.
What about you, Jillian? Are they high on yours? I'm a big fan of you've got to keep them up to date. So that's really interesting. I don't worry too much about automation because I don't know if recent automation software can endorse skills. Can it? Or is that some of the older ones? The older ones used to,
because I don't train anybody on it.
We're all anti-automation, so I think we're all united in that. What do you reckon about skills, Jillian? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so the recruitment packages like Recruiter and Recruiter Lite, I believe, you can find people and search for people via the skills section. So obviously for employees, that's really, really vital. Within the business community and people that are, B2B or B2C and something like that, their opinion is I don't really give a stuff. It's not like you go through somebody's profile and go, oh, that person's got 90 endorsements on that skill and this one's only got 10, so therefore I'm going to employ that one. It's not really that way based. But if you think of the algorithm and the mechanics of LinkedIn and how they prioritize people that come up in searches, their priority is on job hunting and recruitment. That's their major income earnings. So therefore, because they prioritize it, it must weigh on something.
Because sometimes it seems to weigh more than others. So yeah, that's really interesting to hear all those different views there.
I think from an algorithm point of view, it's important. From a human point of view, nobody in business cares.
Yep. Absolutely. But please don't have Microsoft Word if you're a CEO. Make sure you've got a strategy or something up there. I love your point about business, because I think, this is where what Anna said earlier, recommendations really matter. And, I use recommendations in proposals, and I think recommendations, and I encourage my clients to do the same, because when you see a testimonial on a website and it says, Bob says this, and you're like, well, who the hell's Bob? I don't have a last name. I don't have a picture. And then there's a company name that strangely I can't find on Google. So you don't know if you're like the business owner, just write that themselves. Well, a recommendation on LinkedIn, you can see who's given them, so they've got that extra feeling of credibility. But if you can't get recommendations, I just think it's a part you should be
doing if you can't get any.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty easy to get them if people can just embed in their processes every time you get to the end of a project, and somebody says, wow, that was amazing, with a smile and a wink, you could write me a recommendation on that if you like.
Yeah.
So I think just being really casual really helps.
Through trial and error over the years, I also discovered that if you can, ask the person to give it a tiny bit of context. For example, during my role working at ANZ Bank, we worked with Karen. So because years later, when you look at the little thumbnail on the right left-hand side with where they're working, they might not be there anymore. And then they're like in some sort of startup and they're, starving artists trying to be a guitar player, and you going, and the recommendation says, they worked with our whole team, and you go, what?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a great point.
That's a really good point. I've actually never thought about when writing.
Never thought about that either.
Yeah, so give it the context of where you worked with them at the time, so that's the bit that's solid, because the other stuff changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I often tell a funny story where I had somebody write me a recommendation, and they put in it what they did for a living, as who does this. Right. And they ended up getting a job, and they said they got a job because somebody saw their recommendation on my profile.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they got contacted. Anyway, so I shared that story at an event, and a whole load of people wrote me a recommendation. as MBAs at Macquarie Business School, and it was hilarious. So I was like, yeah, that's really nice. I'm going to go and hide all of those because it looks a bit weird.
Note to self.
A feature that I do love though on LinkedIn is that you can actually see the recommendations that someone's given. And it's great from a, particularly I think from a, either a, I guess a tender perspective or a job interview perspective. You can actually go to somebody's profile and look at the recommendations that they've given and see what they value.
Yes.
And there's often quite repetitive, like, it was very honest, or that's maybe a bad example, but you can actually see
Brutal honesty
recommendations they've given. And it's, I think it's a really good, I'm not to just judge of maybe, and a lot of people who aren't particularly active on LinkedIn won't have a lot of those, but I do think it's a really nice feature that you can actually see the recommendations that someone has given, not just received.
Yeah. I love that. And I think honest is a really great example, because if somebody has given a lot of recommendations and they've said in that they found the person they've written a recommendation for very honest, and you can see the word honest popping up, then you're going, that's obviously a core value for them. So in no way am I going to try and fluff anything. I'm just going to be straight down the line and maybe even brutally honest with the person, because that's obviously what their values are. So yeah, I think that's really true. I think love that. What would be my top tip for LinkedIn though? I think the most important thing.
Profiles?
Pardon? Oh yeah, on LinkedIn profiles.
Or overall.
No, just LinkedIn profiles. That's my thing really, is writing LinkedIn profiles. But I think it actually covers everything, is that except for maybe groups, is your strategic intent. You know, like I think it's, for profiles, it's so important to make sure you know why you're here. You know, how many times do you talk to somebody and you're like, so what is it you're hoping to get out of LinkedIn? Or why do you, what are you using LinkedIn for? And they're like, I'm just using it because everybody else is. I'm like, okay, how's that meeting your strategic goals? And they're like, oh, but it's very time wasting. And I'm like, well, that's because you don't know why you're here. So I think it's really important to make sure you've got your strategic intent in mind, What do you think, Scotty? Do you disagree? Because
no, 100%.
Yeah?
Well, your intention helps out exactly as you said, your profile pictures or your headline pictures. It helps out with what you put on your, what you write on your headline, helps out with your skills. Your intention actually is the underlying current for everything. Why are you here? And that then ties into how you present it, rather than just being, well, whatever, I'll just put some stuff up there and see how it goes. Now, if I want to be known as a speaker, I want to be known as an author, I want to be known as a CEO, I want to be known as an inventor, I want to be known as whatever. Well, that affects everything that you do.
It does.
I'm going to actually defend Scotty a bit on having the surfing picture in his background, because I'm going to disagree with you here, Karen, and particularly maybe it's because I work with a lot of business owners in the Coffs Coast area, and the beach here is so much a part of people's, not just personal, I guess, something that they love, but also why they moved here and set up a business here. And so I actually often encourage people to put the beach, because it's a talking point, particularly if they're doing business outside the region, but also it kind of shows how you have a bit more of an interest beyond work. I have a client at the moment who works for, she's very involved sort of at a high level with one of the universities and very corporate, but she's also a farmer. And we actually put the two different profile pictures. We put the farmer in the background and the very corporate and very political figure at the front. And so, in the main profile picture, and I actually like that balance. So I kind of think your interests can come in your background picture.
Wow, I really disagree. I love that. I love it when I read a headline and it's got towards the end of the headline an interest. So, potato farmer or something at the end, that really, or Coffs Harbour, it would be bananas or blueberries, right? But, I really love it when it's at the end of the headline and it's something that's a bit more memorable. Also love it in the about section. But when I see a visual image of it, I'm like, why are you here? Why are we seeing fun? Like, I just, interesting. But I love that we're different on that.
Yeah.
I also think, in terms of that strategic intent and why you're here, I've heard you speak before, Anna, and I hope you'll agree with me on this one, but it's great if you don't. Then, but I think in terms of thinking why you're here, of course you're thinking, well, maybe I'm here for business and maybe I want to grow business, but you need to make sure that your profile isn't all about you. It shouldn't be me, me, me. You are not your audience. You need to think, who's my audience? Who am I turning up for? And what do they care about? What's their pain point? What are their problems? What's that end journey going to look like? So you're not competing with your clients for attention, as in, look at me, I'm so amazing and I've won all these awards and I'm incredible, because that's going to distance yourself from your client. What do you think of that, Anna? Because I just feel that every time I speak, Anna, you bring so much humanity to your relationships. But I mean, I'd love everybody's opinion, but what do you reckon, Anna? Are you with me on that one?
Yeah, no, I do agree with you on that one. You need to really do talk to your audience. I think a lot of people come to LinkedIn with, they came to LinkedIn probably from a job seeking scenario, and they came in with the executive summary that a recruiter wrote for them. And then they have that in their about section, and it's all in the third person. There's nothing personal. It's, Joe is a strategic thinker and, change management consultant, and very, very corporate. It's like, there's nothing that connects a person with that. I don't think, unless you are in a job seeking environment. You've got to really talk to a client specific. If your focus then shifts, you get the job or you start your own business, you've got to look at updating all that kind of language, because it just doesn't talk to your audience. And a lot of people do just have that executive summary there to saying, what somebody wrote about them a few years ago, but it's not, here's how I help you, or here's how you can work with me, I think is the other. Some really good about sections that I'm like, this is me, this is like, here's my why, here's who I've worked with, and this is how you can work with me. And I really love that, because I think that's just a great, okay, right. If I am really interested, or I've seen this person's post and I'm doing a bit more research about this person, here's how we can work together.
Yeah.
We've got a question here which sort of segues into Jillian's topic. So, how do we get our posts to start reaching further, struggling to get the views? Is from Curamed Healthcare. Anyway, that question there segues into Jillian, which is more around the content and things like that. So your profile has to speak to your audience, and then so does your content, and what you're posting does that, right? Is that a good way of segueing into you, Jillian?
It was nicely done. Slide straight in there. Sorry, I was reading that word and I was thinking it was caramelized, but maybe that's just on my mind. Caramelized healthcare, that would be cool, wouldn't it? So how do we get our posts to start reaching further? Yes, that's the old chestnut at the moment. Like I remember back in 2017, my post average was 92,000. And I had a lot less connections. And now, 4 years later, my average post is probably 10. And I think it's the sheer volume of people on LinkedIn just keeps increasing. But there's also just a lot of algorithm changes. So we've got to get really smart about it. Now, there's also the question of what, just like the purpose of having your LinkedIn profile, it's kind of like, what's your purpose for being on LinkedIn in the first place? And what's your strategy? So is it trying to get as many views as possible on your content and then hoping something sticks and it gets in front of the right person? Or is your target market quite niche and you only need to get it in front of, say lawyers? If that's the case, then you only need 80 lawyers to see it and we're good. You're starting to get some leads through this. If it's kind of anybody in Australia with a heartbeat that's on LinkedIn, you got 24 million-ish to try and hit, and you're kind of going to spray and pray and get nothing. So it sort of comes down to that. My biggest piece of advice with content right now is to keep in mind that, and this is from Daniel Roth, who is the VP of LinkedIn itself, and he's also the editor-in-chief, I believe is his official title, but you can look him up. Daniel Roth is his name for LinkedIn. And I've been to a couple of webinars and so forth that he's done, and a lot of people say, oh, you know, this type of post does better and this type of post does better. And usually that says text only is people's consensus amongst the LinkedIn mavericks out there. And they're like, text is the way to go. Text-based posts are the best kind of posts. And he stands by the algorithm is different for absolutely everybody. It is so smart. It is different for everybody. So this advice that people are giving is based on what they're doing and what they consume. So very recently, I've been putting this to the test. I really enjoy polls. So I've been answering every single poll in the last month that I get in my feed. And there has been days that I literally go through my feed and I have nothing else but polls. So it's standout. It's so true. So it's essentially what he said was what you engage with and what you tend to consume and even heavily post is what the algorithm will feed you. So having said that, people consume different content. Some people do like text only. Some people like video. Some people love documents. And if you're only doing one type, then your target market consumes differently. A lot of lawyers don't have time to do video. They can't be bothered. They can't be bothered reading 4 pages of A4 text because that's what they do all day. They don't want to do it from their phone. So some will want documents, some will want videos, some will want text only, some will want, you know, polls. So you really got to have a variety and think about whether you're trying to get the mass exposure or just the niche. And I always look at it going, it's ROI is ROI at the end of the day. And ROI is not always there for somebody who is getting 1 million views, but they're all going to Uzbekistan. You know?
So Jillian, do hashtags make a difference? That's one of the things you were going to bring up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and which I've been so excited about you talking about because I'm like hashtags. Every day I get a question on hashtags and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let's see what Jillian says.
All right,
hashtags.
All right, so I'm not going to have a great answer for you. So I love hashtags. I really do. And the reason I love them is because I keep going down these research Alice in Wonderland holes. And I look into, you know, how many, who's saying what, who's doing the big surveys, you know, Hootsuite does surveys on like 10 million posts or, you know, all sorts of huge numbers. And I love doing the research on that. And then somebody throws a spanner in the works and says, all of my best posts have no hashtags at all. So I'm just like, what? So anybody who wants to do hashtags, and I still personally believe that they do work, right? But research it first. And the easiest way to research it is to put in the search bar of LinkedIn. You can do it on your phone if you're watching this, or you can, you know, close us off and not look at our lovely faces while we're talking and just open up LinkedIn, but just do a hashtag in the search bar and then the word that you want to look for with no spaces, and it should give you the number. Now there is a stupid glitch at the moment that gives you content instead. If you see that, just go to the first post and then find the hashtag you're looking for within that person's post, click on that, and then get to the page where it says the number. So it should say, you know, there's a whole 301 people following that hashtag. I was doing some yesterday for a chef in the food industry. And, you know, some of the stuff we looked up, it literally had like 300 people following it. So it's a really crap hashtag because that's 300 people out of 756 million across LinkedIn. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of people.
It's funny you say that though, because I wonder, I do some posts and some people are onto it within like minutes. It's like they've got a hashtag alert or something, or some sort of alert, you know, and I honestly think it must be hashtags, you know. I mean, how do they find it so fast? I mean, I haven't even finished doing the post properly yet. And I'm looking back and going, well, they're already liking it and commenting.
You're still editing it.
But you've got a few ducks to line up, right? So like for me to post, right, if I'm using, say, LinkedIn tips, okay, I've got 17,000 followers. So I've got first connections and possibly second or third that are following me that I don't know who they are because there's too many to go through and work out who they all are. I mean, you can, but I can't be bothered doing that for like 5,000 people. So you've got those connections following you, and then it's got to line up with that they're also following that hashtag, right? And then they're also logged in right now. So there's a lot of ducks to line up there to make sure that that hashtag is driving towards your target market. But wait, there's more. There's a set of steak knives with this as well, because they may not be following the hashtag because a lot of people don't know how to follow them, right? But they interact with them as a history a lot. So that also can bias the algorithm to go, well, you're not officially following up, but we clearly know that you're interested. So there's that as well. So it's a great big soup mix of minestrone and pea and ham all mixed together to make sure every duck's in a line for those hashtags to actually work.
Okay, so just quickly, I know that I think hashtags, I use it all the time because I know there's a few people do want to follow it. I don't care. And it's only like 50 followers, right? I don't need millions. You know what I mean? I'm okay with it's only being 50 people who want to follow it. And I think I know who probably 30 of them are. But anyway, going back to your last thing, which I'm 100% certain the last thing you're going to talk about is external links. And I'm 100% certain they crash everything to do with the algorithm. LinkedIn will only show it to maybe your really uber followers and really reduce your exposure because they don't want to link externally. What's your thoughts? Is that right or wrong? Or I'm convinced that's the case.
Okay, so that was the case for a long, long, long time. Okay, and then the Dwell algorithm, which I'm sure you ladies will be all over, came out sort of October-ish last year, which, as the word suggests, the longer we dwell on a piece of content, then the algorithm says, oh yes, they're really absorbing this content. They're not just looking at it, which was a direct fight against automation bots that just like something, takes 3 minutes to read, but they just click on it quickly, like it and disappear, right? So it was to combat a lot of that. So, and on top of that, of course, LinkedIn has opened up 1,300 characters in a post to now 3,000. And it's like, that's an essay. I don't have with homeschooling, I don't have that kind of time, sorry. Right. But anyway, we dwell on it longer. So therefore, that's why, documents are doing better and all that sort of stuff as well. So during that time, they, more or less promised that because the external link has a read time, it's a 3-minute read or an 8-minute read or something like that, that you're actually contributing to how long somebody stays on it. Okay, so that was what they looked at. And I was like, okay, cool. So I started doing external links for the first time in like 3 years and was suggesting it to clients. And what was happening is me and them were coming back going, I don't know. So in about April-ish this year, pretty sure it was Hootsuite did a survey on the people that manage and schedule posts through their stuff. Sorry, I just noticed somebody said, what do you mean by an external link? Okay, so if I've got I do a post and I've read something in Huffington Post magazine and I put the URL there and it gives you that like half of the post is a thumbnail of the Huffington Post article with the photo. That's
an external website.
Yeah, external website, external link, yeah. So it's going off LinkedIn, essentially. So, and they did a survey on all of this and found that if you have an external link, you are 6 times worse off. You get 6 times less. 6 times.
I'm convinced that's true, regardless of what they say.
I haven't found that at all. That's interesting.
6 times. That's what
amazing.
I've tested it, and no one can convince me differently.
That it is worse.
It's worse. Oh, long worse.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just summarize that in because I just saw that. Can you say that again? Yes, I can. So, so LinkedIn's promise with the dwell time algorithm last October is putting an external link to a website that's not on LinkedIn will not make your post go worse. It's just as good as a native post with no links. However, the Hootsuite with all the people that schedule posts across there, which would be millions, right? They have found posts with an external link decrease the reach by 6 times. That was much more succinct, wasn't it? So yeah, 6 times.
Reading some of the questions here, we're going to struggle to keep up with them all. But by all means, everyone, keep putting the questions in, because the panelists will get a copy of all the chat and the questions. And if there's time afterwards, we may even hang around a bit longer. So please keep putting your questions in for the panelists so they can answer them. But that's awesome. Just one thing I noticed was if I share a YouTube video on LinkedIn, it doesn't like seeing it under YouTube. If I go to YouTube and share it on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is actually quite okay with that, because it's taking people from YouTube back to LinkedIn. Weird. So if I share it the other way, I get views. So
do you mean literally going to the YouTube video and clicking the share button on YouTube? And then
so at YouTube, I go share on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's okay with that. But if I go to LinkedIn and say share the YouTube video, it doesn't like it.
Right.
I've tested it plenty of times. So there's a little tip for everyone there that's had a little bit of Scotty experimentation.
I haven't tried that.
So if you're going to share a YouTube video, don't go to LinkedIn and put in the URL or share it to YouTube. Go to YouTube and say, I want to share this YouTube video on LinkedIn, and it'll get way more views.
Something that I do mainly for clients, because I don't need to do it so much myself, but I get a lot of clients who will send me content to be reposted on their pages, for example, and they'll send me YouTube links. And I use a little program on a Mac, which is free, and I'm sure there's a Windows equivalent called Clip Grab, and you can grab the actual MP4 from YouTube and download it to your computer and then repost it as a native video. So it's just Clip Grab, all one word, on a Mac. There will be programs on Microsoft to do Clip Grab for Windows or something like that. But I use that actually quite a lot. If you are going to do that, please don't think, oh, I'm going to get this thing to go viral on LinkedIn. Please credit the source if you aren't the source. I think that's really important. It frustrates me when I see people posting videos that they've clearly taken from Instagram and the original creator of that. Like, there was one I saw recently was an artist, and my kids and I got lost in this artist's Instagram videos. They're like absolutely amazing, sort of ASMR, like phenomenal. We love them. And I saw someone post on LinkedIn and they were up to like 30,000 views on this video. And I felt like, actually, because the artist is on LinkedIn, he just doesn't post something. I felt like tagging him and just saying, like, this is a beautiful piece of work, not to discredit the person, but just saying, you should really, if you're ever reposting something from somewhere else, please say, credit to ABC News or something if you are going to post the actual video rather than the link back to the source.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know. I 100% prefer original content. I very rarely do anything that's not my own photo, my own video, my own text, my own thoughts. And I'm a big fan of it. Every now and then there's something that's good to share that's from something else. Someone wrote they share something from the Australian Financial Review and it gets lots of likes. So by all means. But, there's a heap of questions coming up. So, Anna, we might jump into yours, though.
Jillian, have you finished your 3 tips?
Yeah, she has. Well, she might be able to keep talking, but
I'm answering a few of those questions for people that I can. Like, I can't do anything in recruiters because, I don't help job seekers as such. It's lead gen for business owners is my area. But yeah, I'm just.
Jillian's was the hashtags make a difference, and bit indifference, but I think they do. Should you post content using external links, which we now have discussed, and is text content really the best? And
we covered that.
Yeah, I think so. I like text because it's just easy. You don't have to think about it. There's no photos. There's post.
You don't have to worry about how you look.
Videos are 3 hours for a minute. You think, so I've gone back to doing a lot of text in the last year because I just don't have the time. But but that were really good, Jillian. So excellent, and we will keep the conversation going. But Anna, you're going to talk about connecting.
I'm
going to lead us into what do you do next? So Jillian's done all this content. Well, how do you then connect and build those relationships? How do you go back to Karen's profile intent? This is the next piece of the puzzle, right?
Yep. So I'm going to start with my 3rd tip first, because that's probably my most important one, which is if you really want to build relationships on LinkedIn and really connect with your audience, there's one activity that is so underrated, but will get you so far, and that is commenting. It's really easy to scroll through your news feed and go like. What people really notice is comments. One, the person that's posted it comments, but also your connections see your comments as well. So you can really add a lot of expertise and ask some interesting questions. And it's, you know, just by commenting. And if you're struggling to, particularly if you're kind of new on LinkedIn and you don't know what to post and you don't have time to necessarily, you know, not everybody feels that they're a great writer, or they don't edit well, or, you know, there's this barrier to actually creating content. A really good way to start conversations and start connecting with people is actually through comments. Look at who else is commenting. Make a comment yourself. I have a LinkedIn friend in the US at the moment who's doing a lot of audience building by commenting, adding really thoughtful comments on quite high profile publications. So HBR, Simon Sinek, actually going through, there's a few people in my network who just do this so well, is they will actually raise an interesting point or question about the article and really put in a reasonably long comment. And suddenly, this one person in the US, I think, got over 100 connection requests based on this one comment that she put on HBR and Harvard Business Review, sorry. And so it's just such an interesting, I think, activity that people just don't do enough of on LinkedIn, because it really starts conversations. You know, you can make a comment and then you make the comment on the post, and then you go and connect with the person who's made the post and say, I really liked your post. I've just added a comment, but I'd love to connect because I think it's a really interesting conversation. Things like that are really good. I also did a poll a couple of months back, which said, you know, what's the biggest community building activity on LinkedIn? And by far 48% said commenting, and everything else was like 12 or 20%. So definitely a lot of people who really build community do it through commenting. Because it's not all about me. You're supporting other people, you're building relationships, you're creating interesting people to connect with, and you're also really increasing your visibility. And it's a really good activity just to kind of get started. If you're just not great, you know, you might think, well, I really only have time to do 1 or 2 posts a week. You do have time, because you're already there scrolling, probably, is to just stop and comment on a few posts. So really think about that. I'll touch on connection requests through my next point, which is who should you connect with? I think is an age-old debate, and Jillian and Karen, I'd love to get your opinions on this. But I'm very much, when people say, you know, should I connect really widely or should I connect very narrowly, like just the people that I know? And my answer to that is usually somewhere in the middle. And it all comes back to, as Karen mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, your purpose. So if you've got a really large client base that's only in Australia, it's not going to serve you well to be connecting out with Australia or wherever it is that you live. If you do really want to build an international audience, then by all means, then connect widely, but think about more from an industry perspective. And so the question I always ask people is, when you receive a connection request, or when you want to send a connection request, is, can I help this person, or do I know someone, or do they know someone that I can help? So you've got that second reach. Or it might be you're reaching out to someone who writes a lot of really good articles or something. So can you learn something from them? Or do they know someone that I can learn kind of something from? Because it's not just always about clients. Some of us are here to pick up, you know, business coaches and things like that. So what are your thoughts on that, Jillian and Karen? Do you have any other perspectives on who you should connect with, who should be in your network?
Well, I've actually got in my headline that I don't work globally, because my children complain that my voice travels through, because I get so many connection requests from people globally, and I don't work globally. I only work in Australia. So, you know, for me, I keep it really niche. I just think, you know, what is it the Americans say? The riches are in the niches. You know, I think it's really important to play in your pond. But what do you think, Jillian? Because, you know, you speak and train globally, don't you? And you've got a lot of global clients. But yet I know you're also a fan of quality over quantity. And you said that earlier in terms of your content reach. So what's your slant on this? Because for me, my default is almost sort of not connecting with people.
Oh, okay.
What's yours?
Oh, yeah. It's almost like a case-by-case criteria. You know, I mean, one of the first things I do with a connection, I love looking at them by the mobile first, because you got that little preview and you haven't yet clicked onto their profile to check them out. So it's kind of like they have to come through the first criteria, which is did they send me a message? Because then I'll prioritize it. And then gives me context. But you know, there's some messages, like I even got one. I love connection requests. I'm sure that you've got something to say on it too, but there was one. Here we go. I saw you are in business too. So I thought to connect and see if we can help each other grow. If you do not wish to connect, please ignore and do not X as this affects my profile YT. And I'm thinking of like, what the hell is YT anyway?
If you've got to say that in a message, that would be my advice, perhaps not to say.
Just don't send the invitation, connect.
Yeah, well, how many people have sent it out? So, you know, and, you know, put on that they don't know them and reported them for spam. Because every time you click on the I don't know you, you're actually being reported.
Yeah, and I think it's 5 strikes, and then you go and like,
you get a
5 strikes
against your name sort of thing. Yeah, I think it's 5.
Yeah, and then you have to submit an email address in order to connect with somebody.
I should probably clarify what we're talking about for those watching. If you click the cross to a connection request, that's fine. You know, by all means, do that. That's just you know, that's just ignore. There's a second step to report, which is the I don't know this person. So I absolutely encourage you to click cross if you don't want to connect with the person. Just don't go and do that next step unless you think it's you know, a fake account or something. I you know,
or unless they ask you not to.
Some people really do want to build. Some people do build these really wide networks on LinkedIn, and that's great. And I admittedly, I know 2 ends of the stick, because when I managed LinkedIn Local, I was probably connecting pretty much with everyone because it was a, you know, 90 whatever countries, and anybody in theory could host one. So I didn't want to put up the barrier of not doing that. Now I'm very, very different. So and at that time my news feed was almost entirely irrelevant. Like the stuff that I saw was just not relevant to my purpose or even why I was on LinkedIn. And I had to do a cleanup. I didn't remove the connections. I mainly just unfollowed people who weren't posting stuff. Clear ups are great. They can just be quite time consuming. So if you've got a lot of connections that you're not wanting, maybe spend some time, but I don't think there's any harm in keeping them. Just be quite strategic kind of going forward.
There's a gentleman in the UK that makes a point of when he connects with someone, unless it's somebody like that's really, really important to him, he'll unfollow them as a default. So he actually has something like 24,000 connections, but he actually only follows about 110 people. So his feed and his engagement and his interaction, it's almost mimicking Sales Navigator, because it's very, very niche, very tight. And, you know, he does a lot of trade, and it was an interesting, and I thought, God, that would be thousands and thousands of people I would have to unfollow to catch up to that.
Yeah. I've heard John Esperian say that too. But I think I loved your point, Anna, about commenting on posts. Everybody's got time to scroll through their posts, you know, just once a day on a weekday while the kettle's boiling or whatever. Just scroll through your posts and try and comment and try and contribute to those conversations. Since my conversations with John, what I'm trying to get in a habit of is every morning scrolling through my newsfeed, liking and commenting, and clicking on the 3 dots and unfollowing if that person's not adding value to my feed. So yeah, you know, but because I just think, you know, it's
is that you?
I am unfollowing people.
I lost a follower. It was you. I'm tracking this stuff.
Actually, I think I did unfollow you, Scotty, and then I had to go and refollow you, and I'll tell you why. I actually love your surfing videos. I was like, I don't want to be entertained. I don't want to be entertained. Unfollow. And I missed the beach. I missed the beach. So everybody should follow Scotty because it feels like I've had a little holiday. But you had a third tip, didn't you, Anna? What was your third?
I was just about to ask the same. So the other one was, how do you turn interesting connection requests into relationships? So we were just talking about that. So
I think this really comes down to human behavior on LinkedIn, because I've just seen so much automation and so many follow-up messages. And look, when I connect with someone, first of all, I try and send a connection request, something in the text. This is an age-old debate again. And I know Jillian and I have talked about this, and there was some research done in the UK that said it actually doesn't matter whether you do or don't send an actual personalized invite. I do, because it starts a conversation. To me, it's like standing in the corner and waving, or walking up to someone and saying hello. So I like that hello. It also, when somebody accepts my connection request, it actually pops up in my messages. Whereas if I haven't personalized, I might have forgotten that I've reached out to them and they've accepted, but I haven't got any record of that. So I like that record. So I very much starting conversations, but this is about being human. So when I connect with someone, and I don't do this with all my connections, but if they are interesting or potentially in my target market, or somebody who I want to have an ongoing conversation with, I'll send them a message. I'll usually read their profile and pick up something in their profile and say, hey, Scotty, you like surfing, because it's in your background image, and start the conversation with something like that. You've got to be really real about it, though, and not this really automated, hey, we're in business, just like the example that Jillian used. But yeah, I will often look at their recent posts or comments and see what it is that they're interested in. If they've recently published an article, I might send a message and say, that was a great article. But, you obviously can't do this en masse. So I think just be real, have conversations. I think also the other thing that a lot of people who are fairly new on LinkedIn probably don't realize is there's a lot of relationships built on Zoom and Zoom conversations. So if you are having a back and forth with someone, suggest a 30-minute, and it doesn't need to be a sales pitch. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I've had a lot of calls with a lot of people that are just like, we seem to have a bit in common. We're not necessarily even looking to do business together, but it's nice to have that supportive community, or like what I call a virtual village on LinkedIn, which is people that people that you can bounce ideas off, a quick 30-minute Zoom call. Some people will not respond well to that, and that's fine. They might not be used to it, but there are a lot of relationships, I think, built in other areas that are not just in LinkedIn Messenger. They're built in the news feed, they're built through commenting, and you can initiate a lot of conversations and a lot of relationships with people through those commenting, through those connection requests, through those messages, and then ultimately through Zoom conversations.
How do you ask people, Anna, to have a 15 or 30-minute Zoom? Because I don't respond well. Every time I get a, hey, it would be great to get to know you. Let's have a 30-minute Zoom. It'd be like a virtual coffee. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I won't even get a coffee, and I'll give you 30 minutes of advice. No. So I know. So I'm sounding like such an unfriendly person.
No, and it depends who's asking.
How do you phrase it?
It depends who's asking. Like, for example, I think last week I had 2 people reach out to me and ask me to have a conversation because they want to start a LinkedIn local. And I said to them, look, I just don't do these calls anymore. There's a free course up there. Go and grab the course. If you've got any questions after that, just drop me a message. So absolutely. I think I usually do it when I can see that there's already some kind of connection there, in that we've already been talking about something that might be of mutual interest.
I picked up a tip a few years ago from an old client and a mate, Warwick Merry, who's a really massive MC down in Melbourne. And he talks about suggesting a 13-minute Zoom or virtual coffee. And the reason he says 13 minutes is because it gives the impression that it's not, 15, which could turn out to be 20, which could turn out to be 30, but for somebody who's really busy, which is usually senior management or your higher end business people, it sounds very intentional and that you would get everything you need to talk about done quickly. It's a little bit over 10 minutes, but the person's going to allocate in their diary 15 anyway, and it gives the meeting intentionality and very specific intentionality. So he uses 13.
It's also different.
Yeah.
Like, you've thought about this.
I love that. I use 10, and then at the end of 10, I'm like, look, you know, I've got to go. And people are like, but we haven't. And I'm like, I did say 10 minutes. And also you can't set the link. You can't set a Zoom invite for 10 minutes. It goes in 15-minute increments. So I love the idea of 13. Thank you, Mary. I will be using that.
It's almost one of those things where, because some people go, oh, it's an unlucky number. Why would he use 13? And it starts you thinking, and it's memorable. There's nothing, I can't find any downside in it at all. Can't find any downside. But
so I mean, yeah. So to kind of sum up that tip, I think just be real and have conversations. Look at if you actually pay attention to people's posts, you'll start to see their pain points, and you'll start to see whether you might actually be able to help them. I tend to pick up a lot of leads the other way, which is through posts and people coming to me. And I think that's probably circling back to content and having good content around your expertise, or being that kind of real sort of human, more approachable person. So it's not always just my Zoom conversations are not often about sales, if that makes sense.
It's number one in system 1357 is people. So if you're going to send an invite or want a coffee with someone, a virtual coffee, make it about them. You know, Karen, I saw you do work on LinkedIn profiles. I'd love to catch up, find out more about what you do.
Yeah.
You'd probably say, okay, I'll find out, because I might get a sale, I might get some business here, right? But if it's about me, I'd like to find out something about, you know, how you could help me. Well, it's what I want to know more about what you do. And specifically say it, not I saw you're in business, I saw you were on LinkedIn, I think we should connect. You know, no, it's got to be something more specific and targeted, and that, like Jillian said with the 13 minutes, something different from what everyone else sends. But if you actually take 30 seconds to read their profile and make that Zoom call about what they do, the strike rate's going to go through the roof.
Yeah, specific and targeted. And I think that goes for content, communication, and that profile piece.
Yeah.
What do you both think? And Scotty, if we've got more important questions, I know we've only got.
There's a whole heap of questions here. We're not going to get to them. So what I was going to actually suggest was we'll try to wrap it up in time for those people that need to go, right? So we'll wrap up at 12 o'clock. So what we might do now is, look, we can stay as long as anyone wants to stay. We'll call it another 10, 15 minutes networking, maybe do some questions. Is what we might do is go around the room now and just quickly everyone give one 30-second tip or 1 minute tip just to wrap up their you know, you've got profile, content, connecting. So let's just do one tip for everyone to take home. What's your one tip, Karen? Oh, go. Sorry, Anna.
I was just going to suggest, can you save the chat? Because probably what we can do is create some LinkedIn posts.
100%.
And then
I love that.
And then actually each of us can go in and make a quick comment on there.
Yeah, there's 11 open questions still to go. If we spend, 2 minutes on each, there's another half hour type thing. So we just haven't got time to do them all. So, but what we'll do is give one final tip and we'll see what we can get through. And definitely, that's a good idea, Anna. We'll continue on the conversation. So Karen, what's your one profile tip, your one mega tip on your 3 topics that you spoke about?
You are not your audience. Stand in your customer's shoes. You know that Jeff Bezos, Amazon, have a seat at the table for your client. Have a seat at the table for your client.
Sweet. Jillian, around content?
I'm just thinking, actually, I've got a free content calendar if people wanted that. I can put the link, if I can remember it.
Well, actually, can I ask you then around a content calendar, as your one wrap, how often should you post?
Okay, so LinkedIn's official recommendation is approximately 4 times a week. Yeah, so there's LinkedIn's official answer.
What's yours?
Mine's like, well, if you can't think of anything, skip that day because don't just put it out because you've only done 2 this week. Just don't put out content for the sake of putting it out, but just kind of why I did the content calendar, because it's a lot of popular days that you may not think of. Like, for instance, there's Take Your Dog to Work Day. I have my dog's literally the other side of my desk over the back because he's in front of the heater. And sorry. And that's easy to incorporate into a story or to show people inside your office or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to prompt content and relate it. I mean, I've even done, if it was allowed, which it's not in the past, I've done posts on, what would you call the position title of your office pet? And there was so many of them. It was like accounts retrievable. And, it was just, I can't remember them all now, but it was so good that people have been so creative and putting photos of their pets and then coming up with these really cool names for bookkeepers and photographers and, what was that? The manager of marketing or something, or the marketing
head of marketing.
Yeah, head of marketing or something. It was just so clever. So, and you have that relatedness with other pet owners, and they're kind of silly ones, but it was, bring your dog to work day. So why the heck not? So it was cool. It was really cool. But yeah, so it's I'll put it in the chat.
So four a week is a perfect.
That's the official one. So if you can do 3 that are really great, that's great. If you can do 5 that are awesome, that's also great.
Yeah. And 4 a day?
No.
Can't be anything useful after about 3 weeks of that. But anyway, all right, Anna, yours.
Look, I think as a general overall, I've mentioned commenting is a really big one that people don't do. But overall, I think it's people do business with people, and don't forget that. It's really, I'm so anti the automation on LinkedIn. I'm so anti the heavily scripting. I think you can have a few scripts that you use, like, for example, let's jump on a 13-minute Zoom call. But just be aware that you need to be real in yourself. I think people get behind a screen or if they're used to in-person networking and then come to LinkedIn and they feel that it should be different. And in actual fact, it isn't. You need to just build those relationships with people, and a lot will come from that. And focus on quality, not quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not your audience. Have a seat at the table, Karen. 4 posts a week, but quality posts rather than just any post. 2 if it's 2, if it's 5 and they're all quality, go for it.
Absolutely.
And people do business with people. You sound like you've done a System 1357 course. Number 1, it's all about people. Number 1. But speaking of courses, Anna and I have done a course about a lot of this as well. If you want to go have a look at it, it's on System 1357. It's there. So Anna and I put together about 3 hours of content around that. So people can go and have a look. We took months to record it, right? Remember that?
Yeah, that's because we did like an hour every fortnight.
It took a long time.
And that's just on System 1357 is that course. Oh,
yeah.
Everyone check it out. That'd be amazing. Because like I said, I did actually unfollow you, Scotty, and I missed you so much. I had to go back and follow you.
Scotty and I disagreed a lot, actually. It's surprising how much we disagreed, but this is the point, and I think this is a really good outcome of this conversation is as well. You can disagree and do things a little bit. There's no one rule. You can do things different ways. I think it's and we would all probably agree and respect each other's opinions on that.
Well, Karen said it best when she started. It was about your intent. What are you here for? So even Karen's, photos in the background. Well, I surf. It's part of my identity. I'm proud to be a surfer. In fact, I worked really hard. I'm sort of a self-funded retiree now. In fact, I want to be a professional surfer still, and I'm probably too old now. But
yeah. So what works for one person isn't what works for another. Jillian, you said you love polls. I hate polls. If I never saw another poll again, I would be so happy. You've got to do what's right for you and do what's right for your audience, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
And in wrapping up, we'll just wrap up and then we'll stay on for as long as we like for networking or whatever long people want to stay for. But everyone, look, thanks for coming. Karen around profile, Jillian around content, Anna around connecting. 3 really good topics from 3 really good people, which was, in the chat room, we just couldn't keep up with it. So thanks everyone for coming and participating in the chat room. That was really good. The Q&A is there. We will go through the Q&A, and Anna had such a good idea. What we'll do is we'll make some extra follow-on posts with that. So that way we can answer some of your questions.
Yep.
But, apart from that, look, thanks everyone for coming. I'm Scotty Schindler, and I did start System 1357 to help people grow their businesses and help them achieve their goals. And what we did today was a part of that process through the platform called LinkedIn. So it's been such a pleasure to have you 3 on here and sharing all your tips and so on. Thanks everyone for being here once again. Really appreciate it. Thanks for those people who did shout a coffee to the speakers. There's a few coffees to go around. And so that was really thoughtful for everyone. So thank you very much. And we'll see you all on LinkedIn.
Indeed.
Thanks for sponsoring, Scotty. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.